The galaxy was a battlefield. Thousands of warships from different alien species clashed in the endless reaches of space, each faction vying for power, control, and dominance. The constant sound of laser fire echoed through the vacuum, and the lights of distant explosions lit up the dark expanse. For centuries, the galaxy had known nothing but war, but that was about to change. It all started with a strange signal. On a quiet day, while the fighting raged on, a signal was picked up by a few distant space stations. It wasn't anything unusual at first, just a weak transmission, similar to many others sent out by various alien fleets. But there was something about it. Something different. It didn't match any known codes. It was a pattern, a rhythm, something no one had ever heard before. The stations quickly sent the data to their superiors, but by the time it reached the high command of the larger fleets, the signal had already begun to grow stronger. This was no ordinary transmission. Someone, was out there. And whoever it was, they had no intention of hiding. The first faction to investigate was the Krethna, a race of highly intelligent and war-hardened creatures known for their ruthlessness. The Krethna's leader, General Sarnak, was quick to dismiss the signal as a fluke. But when he received reports of it growing louder and clearer, his curiosity began to grow. He gathered his top scientists and military leaders in the command center of his flagship. A massive Krethna warship, the Varix, hummed with power as it prepared to enter hyperspace. "Send a reconnaissance ship to investigate. I want answers," Sarnak ordered, his deep voice echoing through the room. He was not one to waste time, and he expected results fast. The small scout ship, the Kreth, sped off towards the signal source, deep into the uncharted regions of space. As it moved closer, the signal grew more intense. It was now unmistakably artificial, a message from somewhere or someone. The crew of the Kreth did not know what to expect. They only knew that this signal was not from any of the factions they had encountered before. It was different, unfamiliar. Hours later, the ship's commander, Captain Talia, received a transmission on her console. It was faint, but clear enough for her to make out the words. Human. The word echoed in her mind, but she did not understand. She thought it was a mistake, a malfunction in the system. Humans were a myth, a species spoken of in the oldest of galactic tales. Some said they had been wiped out in a long-forgotten war. Others said they had never existed at all. Yet, here it was, the word human, clear as day. Talia's hands trembled as she adjusted her console. She ordered the crew to send the data back to General Sarnak. They had to know more. But Sarnak, like many of his fellow commanders, did not believe it. Humans had been forgotten. Their time had passed. They were nothing but a story, an ancient legend, or so they thought. And yet the signal persisted. The Kreth followed the signal for hours, and finally, it led them to a mysterious point in space, a vast empty void where no stars existed, no planets, no fleets, just darkness. But in that darkness, something appeared. It was enormous. A ship, unlike anything the Krethna had ever seen. Its size was impossible to comprehend, larger than any warship in existence, and its shape was angular, almost like a jagged rock floating through space. The ship was silent, its dark surface absorbing the light from nearby stars. As the Kreth approached, Talia's heart raced. What kind of ship could be so massive and yet so quiet? There were no signals coming from it, no signs of life, nothing. The only thing that was certain was that this ship had been here for a long time, hidden from all who passed. And the signal, it had been coming from this very ship. Suddenly, without warning, the ship's systems came online. The lights of the Kreth blinked out, and their communication system went dead. The silence was deafening. Talia tried to regain control of the ship, but it was no use. The massive warship was taking command. Through the flickering screens, Talia saw something. A word appeared on her monitor. It was the same word they had seen earlier, human. But this time, it was followed by something else. A message. Human warship approaching. Talia's mind raced. There was no mistaking it now. Whatever this ship was, it belonged to the humans. And it was coming. The galaxy was about to be changed forever. The galaxy was on edge. News of the mysterious ship had spread like wildfire. Every faction, from the war-hardened Krethna to the calculating Gorth, was trying to make sense of it. But there was one thing everyone knew for sure. Something had changed. The Kreth had barely escaped the mysterious ship's grasp, and they had no answers. The signal had cut off. The enormous warship simply disappeared into the darkness of space, as if it had never been there at all. But then, just days later, it reappeared. This time, it wasn't in the far reaches of the galaxy. It wasn't hidden in the shadows. It was approaching the Varix, the Krethna flagship, the very ship that had sent the scout ship to investigate. General Sarnak stood in the war room of the Varix, watching the approaching coordinates flash on the screen. His many years of military experience told him one thing. This was no ordinary ship. This was a weapon, a force unlike anything he had ever seen. "It's coming in fast," his chief engineer, Rilak, said. His voice was tight with nervousness. "It's bigger than we thought." "The readings." "Quiet," Sarnak growled. He was not interested in the technical details. He wanted answers. He wanted to know who, or what, was behind the warship that was now barreling toward them. The ship was coming, and nothing in the galaxy seemed capable of stopping it. Outside the Varix, the vastness of space stretched endlessly. In the distance, a faint glimmer appeared, and then it grew. It grew larger and larger until it was undeniable. A massive ship, like a shadow, cutting through space. At first, there was no sound, no transmission, nothing. Just the ship getting closer. It had no identification markings. It was a dark, angular vessel, almost alien in its design. Its edges were sharp, and its surface seemed to absorb all the light from nearby stars, making it appear even more menacing. Sarnak's eyes narrowed as he studied the ship on his screen. It was almost as if the ship was alive, moving with purpose and speed that no Krethna or any other species had ever seen. It was sleek, deadly, and it didn't belong to anyone they knew. It was a warship, and it was coming for them. "Captain," Sarnak said, his voice low, "prepare for battle. We will not be caught off guard again." The Varix powered up its weapons, preparing for what was sure to be a fierce fight. But as the ship grew closer, something unexpected happened. The human warship didn't fire. It didn't even make a move. It simply came closer and closer, until it was within striking distance. Then, without warning, the human ship sent out a single transmission. A clear, direct message, nothing like the garbled signals they had received before. It came in the form of words, and these words were unmistakable. "Human warship." The message repeated over and over, echoing through the comm systems. "Human warship. Human warship." Sarnak gritted his teeth, the audacity of it, to just announce itself like that. But something else nagged at him, a growing feeling of unease. The transmission wasn't a plea for peace. It wasn't an offer of negotiations. It was a statement of undeniable power. And it was clear now. This was no accident. This was a declaration. The human warship finally positioned itself directly in front of the Varix, its massive form blocking out the stars in the distance. Sarnak's command center was filled with tension as every officer waited for the inevitable. But then, just as the first tremors of the battle seemed ready to begin, a voice, calm, steady, and unmistakably human, came through the comms. "We are the humans. We are here, and we will not back down." The voice wasn't threatening. It wasn't boastful. It wasn't even loud. It was simple, direct, and matter-of-fact. A declaration of survival, of strength. The warship was there, and it wasn't leaving. The entire room fell silent. Every alien officer in the room stared at the screen, trying to understand what they were dealing with. General Sarnak clenched his fists. This was not a threat they could easily ignore. This was no simple fleet. No ordinary soldiers. The human warship was something else. Something more. "Order the fleet to fire," Sarnak barked. The Varix's guns powered up. All around them, the other ships prepared for combat. But the human warship remained still, its guns silent. And then, just as the first blast of fire came from the Varix, the human ship moved. Faster than anyone could comprehend, it dodged. It wasn't just maneuvering. It was dancing through the chaos. The alien lasers and missiles missed by a wide margin as the human warship zipped past with incredible speed. The alien fleets were left stunned. It wasn't the weapons of the human warship that made them fear it. It was the human spirit. The warship fought not with overwhelming numbers or powerful tech alone, but with an energy and a will that left no room for hesitation. The Varix and its fleet continued to fire, but they could not catch the human warship. The humans were not running. They weren't even retreating. They were challenging. And that was all the galaxy needed to know. The human warship was here. The calm before the storm had passed. The galaxy was no longer the same. After the sudden appearance of the human warship, the alien fleets were in a state of panic. Some believed that the humans had only a single ship. Others feared they were the tip of an unknown force, with more ships waiting to emerge from the darkness of space. The galaxy wasn't sure which was worse. General Sarnak of the Krethna knew one thing. The human warship could not be ignored. It had destroyed any notion that the galaxy was ruled by the strongest fleets. The humans, with their single ship, had shown that they were a force to be reckoned with. And now, the question was no longer if they would fight, but when. The answer came sooner than expected. The human warship, sleek and silent, had been tracking the alien fleet's movements for days. It knew the Krethna were on their way to reinforce their position near the edge of the galaxy, and the humans weren't about to let them take control of the space. They were coming. Sarnak stood in the heart of his flagship, the Varix, as it powered up its weapons systems. He watched as the fleet gathered around him, ready to engage the humans. His ships were prepared, their weapons primed, and their shields at full strength. But even as he gave the orders to move out, doubt gnawed at him. Could they really defeat the humans with just one ship? The tension was thick as the fleet moved forward, cutting through the cold void of space. The alien ships, large and imposing, formed a line of defense. Sarnak's fleet was massive, much larger than the human warship, which still remained just a dot in the distance. But then, the message came again. "Human warship, we are here." The words echoed through the fleet's comm system, like a challenge thrown in their faces. It wasn't a threat, just a fact. The humans weren't hiding. They weren't retreating. They were approaching head-on, ready for battle. As the human warship grew larger in the distance, the first wave of fire came from the alien fleet. Lasers and missiles streaked across the darkness, targeting the human ship. It was a direct hit, but the warship didn't even flinch. The weapons of the alien fleet couldn't even scratch its hull. The human ship wasn't just fast, it was durable, almost indestructible. The sheer size and power of the human warship were becoming apparent, and Sarnak knew that his fleet would need more than brute force to take it down. But the humans weren't just relying on their defenses. The human warship moved with a precision that was unlike anything the Krethna had seen before. It dodged, it weaved, and it struck back with devastating power. The first few blasts of fire from the human warship hit the Krethna ships with such force that their shields cracked under the pressure. The alien ships were thrown off course, their weapons failing to fire as they lost control. Sarnak's face went pale as he watched the chaos unfold before him. "Return fire. Don't let them get away," he shouted, his voice tense with fear. But it was too late. The human warship was already moving again, its guns firing in rapid succession. A volley of shots struck the Varix directly. The force of the impact sent the ship into a violent spin, knocking crew members off their feet and throwing the command center into disarray. Sarnak gripped the edge of his chair to steady himself as alarms blared across the bridge. "Shields at 40%. Relax. The chief engineer yelled. "Regain control of the ship." Sarnak barked, his voice filled with urgency. He knew that if they didn't regroup soon, they would lose the battle. The human warship, however, was already preparing for the next strike. It didn't hesitate. It didn't pause. It was relentless. The alien fleet tried to close in, surrounding the human warship from all sides, hoping that sheer numbers would give them an advantage. But the humans weren't intimidated. The warship cut through the fleet like a knife through butter, its weapons firing with deadly accuracy, hitting one ship after another. With each shot, the alien fleet began to break apart. The human warship's movements were so precise that it seemed to anticipate every move the Krethna made, dodging missiles and laser fire with ease. Sarnak's fleet was crumbling under the force of the human warship's counterattacks. "Retreat!" Sarnak shouted, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the tide of the battle turning. His ships were being destroyed, and his forces were scattering in all directions. But the human warship showed no mercy. It pursued the fleeing ships, continuing its deadly assault without hesitation. The fear in the alien fleet was palpable now. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. One by one, the Krethna ships were destroyed or forced to flee. The human warship didn't stop until the last ship was either disabled or retreating into hyperspace. When the dust settled, only the human warship remained. The silence in space was deafening. The alien fleet had been defeated, and the humans, with their one ship, had proven their might. General Sarnak stood motionless on the bridge of the Varix, staring out at the wreckage. He knew that this was only the beginning. The humans had shown that they were not just a powerful force. They were a threat that could not be ignored. The galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy was in shock. Word of the human warship's victory over the Krethna fleet spread faster than any starship could travel. The scale of the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. A single human warship had wiped out one of the most powerful alien fleets, leaving behind nothing but burning wreckage and fear. For centuries, the galaxy had been dominated by a handful of alien factions. Each one believed it was the strongest, the most advanced. They ruled their sectors with arrogance, crushing any resistance that dared to rise against them. But now, with the humans' sudden arrival, everything had changed. The alien factions had always believed that their strength was unbeatable, but a single human warship had shattered that illusion in one terrifying battle. And now, they were faced with the question no one could answer. Who were these humans, and what did they want? The Krethna were the first to react. Their defeat was still fresh in their minds, and General Sarnak knew that his people could not afford to lose face. The shame of losing to a single ship was unbearable. He immediately called for a summit with the other alien factions. It was time to form an alliance. "These humans must be stopped," Sarnak said, his voice filled with anger. "They are a threat to everything we've built. We cannot let them take control of our galaxy." The Gorth faction, known for their technological prowess, were quick to respond. The Gorth were pragmatic. They saw the humans as an unknown force, a wild card in the galaxy's carefully balanced system. Their decision wasn't motivated by fear, but by calculation. The humans needed to be studied, understood, and if necessary, eliminated. The Zarak, a race of massive, powerful warriors, were less concerned with diplomacy. They believed in brute strength, and the humans' victory against the Krethna only fueled their desire for battle. They were eager to fight the humans, to prove that their strength was superior. Among the lesser-known factions, there were whispers of hope and fear. Some saw the humans as potential allies, a way to shift the balance of power in the galaxy. Others feared that the humans would destroy everything they had worked for. Whatever their opinion, no one could deny the power the humans held. As the various factions debated among themselves, the humans remained silent. The warship, the only known vessel of its kind, was nowhere to be seen. It had vanished into the vastness of space, as mysteriously as it had appeared. The silence did not last long. 3 weeks later, a transmission came through to every faction's communication channels. It was a simple message, direct and to the point. Human fleet approaching. No one knew where the fleet had come from or how many ships it contained. But one thing was clear: the humans had not come to negotiate. They had come to fight. The first ships to arrive in the galaxy were smaller than the warship, but they were still impressive. The human fleet, though not as massive as the Krethna or Zurek forces, was organized, efficient, and prepared for battle. They were not a scattered, disorganized group of ships. They were a unified force, and their ships moved with purpose. The factions of the galaxy, which had once been so proud of their power, now felt something they hadn't in a long time. Uncertainty. What do they want? The Gorth Council asked, their voices tinged with confusion. They had been confident that their superior technology would protect them. But now, there was a nagging doubt in their minds. The human warship had proven that technology alone was not enough to guarantee victory. The Zorak were the next to react. Their warrior leaders gathered in their war halls, discussing the human fleet with growing excitement. "We will destroy them," they roared, eager for the challenge. But even they knew that the humans had a strength that went beyond mere weapons. There was something about them, something different that made them dangerous. In every corner of the galaxy, leaders and citizens alike were talking about the humans. What kind of species were they? How had they managed to build such powerful ships? And most importantly, what did they want? Some believed the humans were simply conquerors, here to take what they could. Others thought they might be refugees, survivors of some ancient war, looking for a new home. But there was no consensus. No one could agree on what the humans' true intentions were. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's factions were forced to consider the possibility that they weren't the strongest force in the universe. They were no longer the ones who controlled the future. The humans, with their mysterious warship, had become the unknown factor. And that made everyone uneasy. General Sarnak, still nursing the wounds from his defeat, watched the situation unfold from his flagship. His fleet had been badly damaged in the first clash, and he knew it would take time to rebuild. But he also knew one thing: the human fleet had to be stopped, no matter the cost. "We will unite," Sarnak declared to his commanders. "And together, we will show the humans that this galaxy is not for them." The humans, meanwhile, continued to observe from the shadows. They had made their presence known. Now it was only a matter of time before the galaxy would react to them. And the humans were ready for whatever came next. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy's factions had been left in fear and confusion ever since the appearance of the human warship. Its power was undeniable, but so was its mystery. Every race, every military leader, every scientist was asking the same question: how? How could a species, seemingly unknown to the galaxy until recently, possess such a terrifyingly advanced weapon? What was the secret behind this ship that had defeated the mighty Krethna fleet with ease? The answer lay hidden in a small, secluded planet far from the battlefront, a world that to most of the galaxy had been nothing more than a distant, unremarkable rock. But to the humans, it was everything. This planet, known to the humans as Earth, was the birthplace of the warship and the key to the secret of its power. Dr. Isla Grant, a brilliant scientist and engineer, sat in the heart of Earth's classified command center. For years, she had worked alongside a team of the brightest minds in the galaxy to create something that could defend humanity's homeworld, a ship powerful enough to ensure that no one would ever dare to harm them. When the idea of the warship had first been proposed, it had seemed like an impossible dream. No one believed that a single vessel could change the balance of power in the galaxy, but humans had always been known for their persistence, for their ability to push the limits of what others thought was possible. They weren't just creating a ship, they were creating a legacy. The warship, which had appeared in the galaxy's battlefields, was the result of decades of innovation, secret research, and relentless effort. Dr. Grant knew the truth about the warship, its true power, and she had played a key role in its creation. But even she couldn't have imagined the impact it would have on the galaxy. As she sat in her office, the walls filled with blueprints and data streams, Dr. Grant's mind drifted back to the day when the first prototype had been completed. The ship had been designed not just to be a weapon, but a symbol of humanity's will to survive, to protect their world at all costs. The secret behind the warship wasn't just its size or its weapons, it was the humans themselves. They were different from the rest of the galaxy's species. They didn't fight for power or for control. They fought for survival. And that made them more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever faced. Dr. Grant looked at the holographic display in front of her, showing the blueprints for the next generation of the warship. It was faster, stronger, and even more deadly than the first. But what truly set it apart was something far more subtle. The warship was not just a machine. It was an extension of humanity's will to never give up, to never back down. On the battlefield, the warship had been unstoppable. But its true power came from the humans who commanded it. They were fearless. They did not hesitate in the face of danger. They fought with everything they had, even when the odds were stacked against them. The warship was simply a tool, a means to an end. The real strength was the humans themselves. But this secret wasn't something the humans could reveal to the galaxy. Not yet. If the other factions knew that humanity's true power lay in their resilience, in their refusal to be broken, it would make them even more dangerous. And the galaxy wasn't ready for that. Far above Earth, the human fleet moved silently through space, preparing for the next phase of their mission. Their first victory had been only a taste of what was to come. The warship and its fleet were just the beginning. Captain Ethan Cole, the commander of the human warship, stood on the bridge of the vessel, staring at the stars. His crew, a team of the bravest men and women from Earth, stood by, waiting for their next orders. They had all been trained for this moment, the moment when humanity would step into the wider galaxy, no longer hiding in the shadows. The message that had gone out to the alien factions, "We are here," wasn't just a warning. It was a statement of intent. The humans were not here to negotiate. They were not here to seek permission. They were here to claim their place in the galaxy. Cole turned to his officers, his expression firm. "We're not backing down. The galaxy needs to understand that." The warship hummed to life as it prepared to move toward the next destination. The mission was far from over. The human fleet wasn't just a threat to one faction or another. It was a signal to the galaxy. The humans were coming, and they were ready for anything. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Gorth fleet, their commanders were holding a meeting to discuss the growing threat of the humans. They had already seen the destruction the human warship could cause, and they knew that something had to be done. "We must find a way to break them," one of the Gorth leaders said. "Their ship is invincible, but the humans themselves, they can be defeated." The other commanders nodded. They understood that the warship could not be defeated with technology alone. They would need to understand the humans to find their weakness. But that was easier said than done. No one in the galaxy had truly understood the humans. They were a wild card, unpredictable and relentless, and that made them even more dangerous than any weapon. Back on Earth, Dr. Grant continued her work, oblivious to the growing tensions between the factions. She had always known that the warship was more than just a machine. It was the embodiment of humanity's strength, and with it, the humans would never back down. They would never be broken. The galaxy had underestimated them once, and now humanity's warship would prove that they were not just survivors. They were a force that could change everything. The galaxy had reached a breaking point. The fear and uncertainty that had been building since the first clash with the human warship had finally reached its peak. The alien factions, once powerful and confident in their own might, were now questioning their very survival. What had once seemed like an isolated incident, a single human warship taking down the Krethna fleet, had turned into something much larger. The humans weren't just a threat to one faction. They were a threat to the entire galaxy. The Krethna, still reeling from their defeat, were desperate to regain their honor. They had suffered the greatest loss of any faction, and their pride had been shattered. General Sarnak, who had led the fleet against the humans, knew that their only hope of survival was to unite the galaxy's factions against the human threat. The Krethna could not stand alone. They needed allies. But convincing the other factions wasn't easy. The Gorth, ever the strategists, were cautious. They had watched the humans closely, studying their tactics and technology. Their conclusion was clear. The humans were powerful, yes, but they were not invincible. The Gorth believed that the right combination of force and technology could defeat the humans. They just needed time to prepare. The Zorak, on the other hand, saw the humans as a challenge, something to be defeated by strength alone. The Zorak were a proud warrior race, and the thought of an unknown species coming to their galaxy, uninvited and unchallenged, was intolerable. They called for immediate action, ready to send their fleets to the front lines to crush the human threat. They believed that brute force could break the humans, just as it had broken so many others before. But there was one faction that didn't see the humans as a threat: the Valtrex. The Valtrex were a race of highly intelligent beings, known for their diplomacy and their ability to see the bigger picture. They had studied the humans from the start, and they believed that there was more to the story than simple conquest. They saw the humans not as invaders, but as survivors who had fought and won against overwhelming odds. The Valtrex, however, knew that the galaxy was on the brink of war, and they feared what would happen if the factions continued to react with fear and aggression. "We must not rush to judgment," said Ambassador Virik, the leader of the Valtrex delegation. "The humans are not our enemies. But if we continue down this path, if we make them our enemies, we will all lose." Her words fell on deaf ears. The other factions were too consumed by their own fear to listen. The Krethna, Gorth, and Zarek had already made their decision. The humans must be stopped. The tipping point came when the human fleet arrived in the heart of the galaxy, far beyond their previous battles. This was no longer a single warship showing up unexpectedly. This was a fleet. Several human ships, including warships and smaller vessels, entered the galaxy's core with deadly precision. Their arrival was a statement, not just of power, but of intention. The galaxy held its breath as the human ships moved silently toward the heart of the galaxy, past the strongholds of the most powerful factions. Every faction knew what this meant. The humans weren't here just to defend themselves. They were making a claim to the galaxy itself. General Sarnak of the Krethna was the first to react. His fleet, still recovering from their earlier defeat, was in no shape to face the human fleet head-on. But they had no choice. This was the moment that would define the fate of the galaxy. The Krethna would either fight the humans now, or risk losing everything to them. "We will not wait for them to strike first," Sarnak said to his commanders. "Prepare the fleet for battle." The Zarak, eager for the fight, rallied their warriors, ready to join the Krethna in their battle against the humans. The Gorth, with their advanced technology, began to deploy their forces as well, preparing for the coming war. They knew that this battle would not be fought on the ground, but in the stars, and they would use every advantage they had. The galaxy's factions were united, but not in peace. They were united in fear, bound together by a common enemy they did not yet understand. Meanwhile, aboard the human warship, Captain Ethan Cole stood on the bridge, staring out at the vast expanse of space. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the decisions that lay ahead. The galaxy was about to erupt in war, and humanity was at the center of it. "Captain, we've received messages from every faction," Lieutenant Maria said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "They want to negotiate. They want to know our intentions." Captain Cole took a deep breath. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. He turned to his crew, his face determined. "We don't want war," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But if they force us into it, we will fight. We will show them that humanity will not be destroyed. We will show them what it means to face us. The human fleet didn't move to engage immediately. They weren't seeking war. They were seeking to make a stand, to make it clear that humanity would not be pushed around by the alien factions. The human fleet wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy. As the human warships moved closer to the heart of the galaxy, the factions had no choice but to prepare for the coming conflict. The tipping point had been reached. The galaxy was about to change forever, and no one knew how it would all end. The battle was upon them. After months of tension, confusion, and uncertainty, the galaxy's factions were now facing the inevitable. The human fleet, bold and unyielding, had arrived in the heart of the galaxy, and every faction had prepared for war. But no one could have imagined what was about to unfold. As the human ships entered the battlefield, the vastness of space became the stage for a fight that would change the galaxy forever. The Krethna, Gorth, and Zarek fleets were positioned in full force, each ready to take on the human threat. They had made up their minds. The humans had to be defeated, no matter the cost. General Sarnak stood on the command bridge of his flagship, staring at the approaching human fleet. His hands gripped the control panel, his mind racing with thoughts of revenge for the Krethna's defeat. His fleet had been humiliated, and he would not allow that to happen again. The humans were not just a threat. They were an insult to everything the Krethna stood for. "Prepare for engagement," Sarnak ordered. "This time, we destroy them." The Gorth, ever the tacticians, were quick to react. Their advanced technology had already been set in place, their ships outfitted with the latest weaponry designed to neutralize the human fleet. They knew that the battle wouldn't be won with sheer strength alone. It would take precision, strategy, and intelligence. The Gorth had always believed that their technology would give them the upper hand, and now was the time to prove it. The Zarak were the last to join the fray. Their warlords, eager to prove their superiority, unleashed their massive fleets without hesitation. To them, this was simply another battle, another opportunity to display their might. They believed that overwhelming force would crush the humans, just as they had crushed so many enemies before. But as the first shots were fired, something unexpected happened. The human warships, though outnumbered, moved with astonishing precision and speed. The way they worked together, the way they coordinated their attacks, was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. It wasn't just their technology that made them dangerous. It was their unity, their sheer determination to win. Each human ship fought as if it were part of a single, unstoppable force. On the command bridge of the human warship, Captain Ethan Cole observed the unfolding battle with a cool, focused demeanor. His crew moved with calm efficiency, each person knowing their role, their mission. The galaxy had underestimated them, but now, the humans would show that they were not just survivors, they were fighters. "We've trained for this," Captain Cole said, his voice steady. "Stay sharp, stay united. We will win." The battle raged on, with explosions lighting up the dark expanse of space. Ships collided, weapons fired, and the galaxy's most powerful fleets began to feel the pressure of the human onslaught. The Krethna, Gorth, and Zarek had all underestimated the humans, thinking that their combined strength would be enough to overwhelm them. But the humans were relentless, adapting to every move their enemies made. In the chaos of battle, the tides began to turn. The Gorth, who had relied so heavily on their advanced weapons, found themselves at a disadvantage. The human warships were faster, more agile, and their tactics unpredictable. The Gorth's carefully laid plans began to fall apart as the humans adapted, countering every attack with a precision that left the Gorth commander stunned. They had never faced an enemy like this. The Zarak, whose warriors were known for their brute strength, discovered that their massive fleets were not enough to break the human forces. Despite their overwhelming numbers, they couldn't match the coordination and resilience of the humans. Their warlords watched in disbelief as their ships fell one by one, their confidence shattered. But it was the Krethna who suffered the most. having been the first to engage the humans, they were already battered and beaten. The human warships tore through their fleet with terrifying efficiency. The Krethna were relentless in their pursuit of victory, but their determination wasn't enough to overcome the human strength and unity. As the last of the enemy ships fell, silence descended over the battlefield. The human fleet stood victorious, its ships floating in the empty void of space, damaged but intact. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. In the aftermath of the battle, the leaders of the galaxy's factions were forced to confront the truth. The humans were not like any species they had ever encountered. Their strength lay not in their weapons, but in their will to survive. They fought not for power, but for survival. And they would not be destroyed. On the bridge of the human warship, Captain Cole looked out at the stars, a quiet sense of pride settling over him. The battle was won, but the war for the galaxy was just beginning. "We've done what we came here to do," he said. "The galaxy will never forget this day." And it never did. The story of the human warship and its crew spread across the galaxy, becoming a tale that would be told for generations. The once proud and powerful factions now knew the truth. The humans were not just a species, they were a force of nature, a force that had changed the galaxy forever. The humans had come from nothing, and now they stood as one of the most powerful forces in the universe. And no one would ever forget the day when the galaxy trembled at the might of the human warship.